Good morning, everyone. I am now going to report the legitimization of the state in Inca myth and ritual by Bauer Brian S. 1996. Abstract. The topic discusses how the corn planting and harvesting rituals performed in Cusco, which is the capital of the Inca Empire, that were used by the elite to promote their divine status through their association with mythical beings. So, for the information of everybody, the annual corn planting ceremony was a ritual reenactment of a battle between the mythical first Incas, Manco Capac, and Mama Waco, and the legendary indigenous inhabitants of the region. Because back then, myths were used, I think, until now, but talking about the past eras, myths were used by the elites of all early chiefdoms and states to legitimize their privileged positions. Their ritual reenactments should be viewed as an important elements in the development of complex ancient societies. So, in case also you're wondering where Cusco is, it was long an important center of indigenous people, and it was the capital of Inca Empire or Incan Empire. And Incan Empire was also the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. It is somewhere in the country of Peru. Next, in the central Andes of Peru, myths were used to foster the development and perpetuation of social hierarchies by providing elites access to powers beyond the realm of ordinary individuals. So, talking about the myths, by definition, it is a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people or explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and is typically involving supernatural beings or events. So, the access to supernatural, established in the mythical past and reiterated in the present through rituals, legitimated the classification of the elite as separate and superior social beings. Rituals, also by definition, is a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. Viewing in this way, we can see that the development of a mythology and a ritual system supports the ruling elite's claim to power is a critical element of successful chiefdom and statecraft. Next, for the details on agriculture as warfare among Inca. So, corn was the most important crop for the Inca Empire here. It was stated that corn was their major source of nutrition and the base for the corn beer called chicha, which was consumed during all rituals. Corn was also a major tribute item provided to the state, and during mid-October to early May, it is the growing season for corn in the Cusco region. So basically, corn production in the Inca Empire occurred on a number of socioeconomic levels. It was again the basic food crop for the peasant communities, and villages located either below or above the production zone exchanged their regional produce for corn or gained direct access to this critical crop through the establishment of colonies in corn religions. So, from the Inca perspective, humans shared this world with gods, ancestors, and the spirits of landscape. To ensure the health and prosperity of human communities, relationships had to be maintained with these supernatural forces through repeated gifts of food, corn beer, and other things of value. Next, we also have here the major deities of Inca. Four, therefore, the sun, Inti, the moon, or Mamakila, the stars, and the thunder and lightning, or Ilyapa. So these were assigned large tracts of corn land, and the produce from these fields was used to support the cults of these deities. Many of these were worshipped in Coricancha, the main Inca temple of Cusco, but hundreds of rocks, springs, and other sacred features known as huacas dotted the landscape of Cusco and beyond. And also the breaking of the earth, or it is also known as plowing in August, began the corn cycle that concluded 8 months later with the cutting of dry corn stalks and harvesting the ears. So here are the on how they, let's see, how they know when will be the celebration celebrated or the ceremonies will be conducted. So here the ceremonial calendar identified through solar observations a specific day on which the emperor ritually began a new corn season by plowing and planting sacred fields. Also, the ritual plowing was correlated with the solar event was one of the most important annual ceremonies held in Inca capital. So again, they were just basing on the calendar through solar observations for them to know when will be the new season for the corn planting or plowing. So let's now come to the timeline. So 1100 CE, the Inca, led by Manco Capac, migrated to the Cusco Valley, where they established their capital. Basically, Inca tribe settles in Cusco region that CE. Next, 1425 CE, Sapa Inca Viracocha begins to build the empire. Um, It was a CE that Incas maintained tribal boundary in Cusco, not looking to aggressively expand it. So next, 1438 to 1463, Yapanki begins to rebuilding program in the capital of Cusco and also defeated the Chanca tribe for complete control of Cusco. 1470 to 1471, the Incas conquered the Chimu tribe that was based in Chanchan. 1493, Inca's empire expanded by Tupac Inca's son, Huayna Capac, and the 1532 Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro arrived in Peru. Um, Here is a map of modern city of Cusco. So in connection to this, it was in 1539 to 60, Garcilaso de la Vega provided a detailed description of ritual corn plowing and indicates that during his time in the imperial city, he say that the royal harrowing ceremony 2 or 3 times, and he also noted that it took place in the field of Colompata, which is a sector of Cusco now, and also, I mean, it was known before Colompata here in the upper left, but now it is known as the San Cristobal. Now for the social structure, the Incas followed a strict social hierarchy system, and according to this system, there were four main levels, where there is a Sapa Inca, the royalty, the nobility, and the ailu. So, below the royalty came the nobility, which was the class of people who acted as leaders to govern over the rest of the Inca's population. So the nobles were also respected people who had certain privileged and also enjoyed many freedoms. Example of that is that they don't, they are not required to pay taxes, and also they received gifts from others. I think also the ILO was the peasants. Here you can see it in the picture in the lower people, or the ones that is in the last arrangement of this pyramid. So it was easy to tell if someone was royal or nobleman, because when a royal or nobleman was just a small child, a board would be strapped to their head, and this would force to the top of their head to grow almost to the point. And this was a symbol of nobility, including also the reigning royal family, wives, sons, and any relatives of the Sapa Inca. So just like other chiefdoms, they also have this, because we going back to our topic last, what was that, midterm ata or prelim, chiefdoms was something that has the hierarchy or suicide hierarchy structure, something like a pile of people that has really more opportunity, and then others don't have. They really have that kind of structure. So next is for the characteristics in terms of cultural and systematic. So here, animals, including llamas. I guess all of you had already seen a llama on picture, and also guinea pigs. These animals were favored as sacrifices to the gods, and the ceremonial knives were produced for these sacrifices. And in many cases, the handle of the knives were punched in order to be worn around the neck like a pendant. So the majority of the ceremonial knives from Costco were forming a letter T. The knives were formed into a letter T, but knives with only one sharpened side were popular in northern coast of Peru. So here, precious metals had significant meaning for the Incas. Gold was associated with the sun and silver with the moon. That's why it was written here that the noble Inca officials of high hierarchy and other individuals dressed with jewelry made of precious metals and used little cups and other gold and silver objects in their feasts. So the special object of religious rituals were also made from the same sacred materials. Also, the core rituals on the Inca were performed with the elite. Sorry for the spelling. I'm lacking letter E. So, performed with the elite draped in their finest war regalia, and the earth breaking itself was syncopated with joyous songs of agriculture and warfare. So, in these characteristics, it was also said sa guidelines that the myth tells of the origins of agriculture with the arrival of the corn to the Cosco Valley with Manco Capac and Mama Wangpo. So it addressed now how humankind came to dominate nature. Next, political structure. So Inca rule was much like a famous architecture based on compartmentalized and interlocking units, because the political structure of the Incas was complex and tightly controlled. So it was also said that the Inca needed a sophisticated and organized government to maintain an empire this large. And the Inca government was called the Tawantinsuyo. It was a monarchy ruled by a single leader called the Sapa Inca, or the emperor or king of the Inca Empire was called the Sapa Inca, or also known as sole ruler. So these nobles could form the the nobles of this leader, or the Sapa Inca, um, could form and instigate policy and councils with the king, and even more importantly, influence the final choice of the king's successor. So this way, it may be why later Inca kings married their own sister. So in that era also, in terms of political structure, the Inca kings marry their own sister so as to avoid widening the elite power base of the very top of the government structure. So they use that strategy for the let's just say, the legacy to run lang over their clan. Next, the social characteristics. Inca society was highly stratified. Stratified because the Incas follow a strict social hierarchy system. As what I've mentioned earlier, um, Inca rituals also include elaborate forms of divination and sacrifice of humans and animals. So in the emperor ruled with the aid of an aristocratic bureaucracy, exercising exercising authority with harsh and often repressive controls. Inca technology and architecture were highly developed, although not strikingly original. And under the empire of the Inca religion, it was a highly organized state religion, but the worship of the sun god and rendering of service were required to subject people their native religions were also tolerated. But the Inca golden rule, do not steal, do not lie, do not be lazy, was also still or is also still observed in the region. It was very little is new about the human condition, but we have always been what we are now. It was their golden rule that needs to be practiced forever, or like as long as Incans were alive. That's their golden rule. Golden rule. Next slide, the influence to neighbors. Uh, the Inca civilization is among the most vital of South America in terms of its cultural influence and legacy. Why? Because the Inca began as a small tribe who steadily grew in power to conquer the other people all down the coast from Colombia to Argentina. They were remembered to their contributions to religion, architecture, and their famous network of roads through the region. Second fact is Second fact about their in terms of influence. In the case of the Inca, their empire stretched down the coast of South America from the modern-day Colombia through Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina, and they influenced the lives of the people both within that empire and outside of it. So it was the largest pre-Columbian empire in the America, and it is a religion that influenced others in the region as well, so that even in the modern day, Christian sites are located according to the Inca concepts of sacred places like hills, mountain tops, near water, or places which once corresponded to Inca deities. For the economy and trade, Inca culture believed in barter as a form of payment that consisted of exchanging one from another thing. Also, along with foods, other goods such as ceramics, clothes, and metal goods, as well as meats, wool, skins, and feathers, were also traded. They pack animals, mainly llamas, were used to transport goods. This labor service, for the third one, each citizen was required to offer a period of labor and a portion of their harvested crops as tax to the Inca rulers. So there was no currency in Inca, though. World taxes were paid in kind, usually foodstuffs, as what I've said, barter, and this labor service was known in the Mita. It was an agricultural land, and years were divided into three parts: the production for the state and religion and the gods, for the Inca ruler and for the farmer's own use. So local communities were also expected to expected to help build and maintain such imperial projects as the road system, which stretched across the empire. So to keep track of all these statistics, the Inca used the quipu, or a sophisticated assembly of knots and strings which was also highly transportable and could record decimals up to 10,000. Next, other details. Origin myths reveal not only expressions of basic, I'm sorry again, for social relationships, but also endorsements of present day social arrangements. So within that complex societies, especially chiefdoms and states with semi-divine rulers, this takes on a particularly recognizable form. Next, the mythic heroes are not vague primogenitors of the past, but the direct ancestors ruling elite. So, through them, the powers of the state became inextricably mixed with the maintenance of the social order. So, within the general confines of state ideology, rituals and myths are used to support the ruling elite's privileged positions. So, Incas also promoted their sacred status through their association with mythical beings, and some of their most important obligations were reenactments of their ancestors' primeval victories. So, in conclusion about the topic, the centralization of power and authority in early complex societies may have run concurrent with the abilities of the leaders to legitimate their positions through myth and ritual, and the use of the mythical past by a society's elite is perhaps the best means of legitimizing authority since it is the arena that the social order is defined. That's it. Thank you.